Hello everyone and welcome back to Deloitte Let's Talk. Today's discussion is about electronic signatures as a smart business solution which has probably gained more traction in the past few months due to the situation we found ourselves in with everyone working remotely. I am joined today by my colleagues Gianluca who is a lawyer with specialist knowledge in the digital law space, and Ludwig Micallef, who is a senior manager in the consulting team, has several years of experience in providing digital solutions to our clients. So the reason why we decided to organize this session is to discuss the benefits and advantages of using electronic signatures or e-signatures. E-signatures offer a unique solution which allows for companies to execute contracts remotely, effect resolutions in writing remotely, and operate various aspects of normal corporate procedure and good governance without inhibition. While e-signatures are particularly important in the context of COVID, even beyond COVID, they are a great value added to any business. So my first question to Gianluca is, what are exactly electronic signatures and what benefits do they provide versus traditional wet ink signatures?
An e-signature is an electronic expression of consent, which is attributed legal validity by the European EDAS regulation, which, being a European regulation, benefits from being directly applicable in all EU member states. Now, e-signatures are not a new concept. They've been around in one format or another pretty much all throughout the 20th century. But, as Yanika said, the platform seems to be set for them to receive a very considerable boost in popularity and maybe finally enter the mainstream. Given that COVID has now made it very difficult for shareholders or directors to meet up in person and perform a wet ink signature together. Now, e-signatures offer a ready-made solution for our clients because they can allow companies to execute contracts remotely, to effect resolutions in writing remotely, and operate various aspects of their normal corporate procedure and good governance without inhibition. Now, in terms of the EDAS regulation, there are three recognized types of e-signature. And the first is the simple e-signature. Now, that's something of an umbrella term, which is used to provide legal validity to a variety of very straightforward and simple types of e-signatures, such as, for example, a scanned copy of your handwritten signature or a ticked I accept box. The second type of e-signature is the advanced e-signature. Now that's the next level, and as you might say, it's the minimum standard which we as professionals feel offers a solid basis for reliability in terms of legal effect and admissibility. Now, advanced e-signatures are uniquely linked to the signatory. So they are capable of identifying the signatory, and they are created with electronic signature data, which is which affords the signatory the possibility of verifying with a high degree of certainty that does in fact represent his own signature. And the e-signature is linked to the contractual data within the electronic contract in such a way that any subsequent changes are identified. The third type of e-signature, the most advanced, and the only e-signature type which is lawfully afforded equivalent status to a handwritten signature, is the qualified electronic signature. Now, these signatures need to meet advanced technical requirements, and they need to be backed by a digital certificate which is issued by a qualified trust service provider. Therefore, you benefit from a very high degree of admissibility in legal proceedings and generally a very, very, very confident reliability. Now, to address the second part of your question, as to the benefits of e-signatures versus traditional types of wet ink signatures, the most obvious advantage is that of speed and efficiency. So, e-signatures can shorten execution time from days or even weeks, as occurs with the traditional system which we use at the moment, to minutes or maybe hours. But over and above that, there are also various advantages which go far over and above what we're currently used to in this space. For example, e-signatures allow for a regulated system of timestamps, which can allow the signatory responsibility on the involved parties within the contract to actually identify every step of amendment which takes place within an electronic contract. There's also the element of security, whereby the facilities provided by a proper software e-signature tool are considerably ahead of traditional signatures, which are simply liable to be identified and copied and forged.
Thank you, Gianluca. We must also keep in mind, however, that the EIDAS regulation is locally subject to the terms of the Electronic Commerce Act, and this sets out in its fifth schedule certain exceptions where e-signatures will not be accepted, such as, for example, transactions concerning immovable property and also tax documentation, for example. You also need to question whether the authority where the document is going will accept e-signed documents. Although the mentality is shifting, however, there are still some authorities which will not accept such documents. So that's important to keep in mind as well. So let's move on to a more technical question for Ludwig, because this is a question we get from some clients. How does an electronic signature actually work in practice?
So, normally you'll need a platform which handles electronic signatures, and you'll have the author or creator who will upload the document as a template, be it a PDF or a Word document. Basically, they'll be uploaded on the platform. And the first thing we'll do is typically set up the workflow. The workflow meaning the process, so who will sign the document first, who will flow to, who needs to sign the document, and we'll define that. In addition to that, within the document, you'll need to tag the sections which basically would need to be filled out by each signatory. So be it an ID card number, a name, a surname, the areas, the specific areas for the document which need to be amended as you go along. Once that is set up, then you move on in setting up the authentication mechanism. And there are various ways how you can authenticate users who will be signing to make sure that it is being actually signed by the intended individual. Common mechanisms include having an access code, which would be transmitted separately from the platform. You could have an SMS code or a phone call, similarly to what is now really becoming popular, like multi-factor authentication. You can also use identity card, being a government ID card or a European ID card. Or else there's also the option on some platforms using a knowledge base. So the platform would have some particular information about the individual, such previous address, or former address, or current address, and this platform will ask you to reconfirm those details to be able to authenticate you. Once that is all set up, you'll kick off the process, the workflow, to be sent out to the signatories. Once the process is off, an email is sent out to the first signatory, who will be prompted to authenticate themselves basically with the authentication mechanism selected. The individual then can access the platform, review the document, fill out the sections which need to be completed, and eventually sign the document. Moving on to the next signatory, being 1, 2, 3, depending on the number of signatories selected initially. Along the way, the original creator will also receive notifications of the process and the flow, and depending obviously until the process is fully completed. Once all parties have signed the document, typically the document would be stored in a digital format, of course, in a secure environment, signed by using a certification using public key infrastructure, which basically ensures that the document is digitally signed. As part of the process, you can also have templates which are commonly used, typically, for example, NDAs or contracts, and these obviously can be used over and over again for individuals, making the process even faster rather than starting over and again each and every time. These platforms also offer more advanced features. For example, you can edit the workflow along the way in case a signatory changes. You can also add expiry settings and reminder notifications. And you can also add private messages in between different signatures. Maybe you want to address a particular message to a particular individual. Ultimately, as a process, it's totally transparent and it's considered quite efficient with notifications and everyone being informed all along the way.
Yes, I agree, Ludwig. We believe that e-signatures can increase efficiency and flexibility, and is going to create a positive disruption in the corporate space and in business in general, I believe. Gianluca, what specific changes to the standard corporate and regulatory process do you foresee with the onset of electronic signatures?
Yes, well, we should acknowledge the fact that change is already on the way. The Motor Business Registry, the MBR, is already shifting towards accepting statutory forms via electronic format and via e-signature. And we're noting an increasing appetite among our client base for e-signature solutions. However, you can't deny the fact that there are still various provisions of the law which will require amendment and tailoring in order to cater for the culture shift which will come about once the disruption you mentioned becomes a normality. But we believe that this redirection will present both a necessary and a positive change to our business processes, from speed to reliability to security to the user experience. I mean, the advantages are simply too considerable to ignore. And the truth of this is evidenced by the fact that we are witnessing a considerable influx in demands for services within our tax and legal sector. Companies want to execute corporate resolutions and contracts on this basis, and service providers will benefit hugely from the ability to conduct client onboardings facilitated by e-signatures and sign letters of engagement with the facilitation of e-signatures. We look forward to seeing more authorities, more clients, and even more service providers changing their approach and shifting towards this new mentality. Now, that being said, Ludwig, my comments have really revolved around my own experience in Yanica's in the financial services industry. However, from your end, what has the feedback been from your clients in relation to the demand for e-signatures in more perhaps mainstream consumer-targeted businesses?
Basically, we come across various scenarios, both in B2B and in the B2C world. If we look at B2C, for example, let's say banking, a car loan, a bank loan, or opening an account. We also see scenarios in the government context, possibly being digitized, things like grants, social services, permits for businesses or individuals, and even procurement possibly. Service contracts are also really popular, so think, for example, internet subscription, which, for example, you renew every year or every 2 years, and basically you need to renew. That could be going to digital signature instead. Obviously, this would make it much easier for consumers, even vendors or even employees. Talking about employees, for example, things like onboarding employees, contracts of employees, tracking expenses and signing expenses could be digitized as well through digital signatures. Finance operations such as invoicing or even signing internal policies or documents could be digitized as well. In the B2B context, we've seen that digital signatures probably have gained more traction than other areas though. Things like sales agreements, service contracts, referral agreements, NDAs and purchase orders, they're all being digitized nowadays. Probably the reason for this is the fact that nowadays in the business world, a lot of things have been digitized already and made it simpler for businesses to adapt such platforms and solutions.
So unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. Thank you, Gianluca and Ludwig, for the information you've given us today. Deloitte is actively assisting clients with implementing e-signature solutions, so feel free to reach out to us in the description box below. Thank you very much.